Howdy everyone. So this is my new setup in the shop. It's not too different. I just jockeyed things around a little bit so that I could have the fuselage at a diagonal through the shop to give me more room at the front and the back. So originally the fuselage was swung over this way and it was basically parallel to these cabinets along the back. All I did was swing it out to give me a lot more room in the front here to work. And then of course I had to move my workbench out of the way. That's basically all that I did. So now I've got my horizontal stabilizer set up over here on the floor. This is temporary as well. I just moved this so that I can get my horizontal in here. But I have it leaned up against these cabinets. Not that it matters, but I chose these cabinets because I don't need to get into these very often. I didn't want to put it out here where I have more room because I use these cabinets more and I need to get to things up here, and if I need to, I need to have access to my bandsaw. So I decided to put it back here in this corner. I don't have as much room to work, but it will be okay because I'm just pouring epoxy and then letting it sit. So I have the horizontal on the floor. I've got it padded. I've got a support here with a towel to keep the horizontal from falling away from the cabinet. The 2x4 is basically just a weight, and I can slide that back and forth as I need it to get the horizontal level. And then what I have done, I just have a very small, very thin, very lightweight piece of plywood. This is 16th inch plywood. You don't want to use anything heavy because obviously it's going to weigh down the wingtip, and then when you take it off, the wingtip might recover and you're going to lose your center, your level on the bubble. So I'm just using a very simple plastic bubble, and I don't know if this will focus on that, but it's as centered as I can get it. So the face of this plexiglass tip or fiberglass tip, this should be level. You don't want to set the level directly on your foam because when you installed the foam, there's no way to tell how level the actual foam is. You want the epoxy to lay level with this top edge of the fiberglass. So you need to put something relatively lightweight that won't disturb the fiberglass. Lay it on top, and then you can put your level on top of that and get everything nice and flat. I cannot do both tips at the same time because they're slightly different. When I have this one level, that one down there is ever so slightly off. So I'm just going to do them one at a time. So now that I have this level, I'm going to mix up some straight epoxy. I wanted it right out of the containers, a nice watery consistency. I'm going to pour that in here very slowly and just let it fill this up. Remember I said the foam was recessed slightly below the top edge of the tip. So with the foam dropped recess, I can fill in this top part with the epoxy, and it should self-level and it should be nice and flat. So that's what I am going to attempt to do next. And if that works out nicely, once it's cured enough that I can move things around without affecting it, then I'll do that other one. So I'll give this a shot and we'll see what happens. Howdy everyone. Alright, well, I have the tips on the horizontal stabilizer are now finished, and just doing a quick recap. My process was just as simple as fitting the tip to the horizontal with the elevator in place so that you can monitor how to trim the fiberglass tip so that the elevator spacing is correct and you don't have any binding. Once that was done, it was just a simple matter of putting in a little bit of fuel tank sealant, personal preference, not required, doing the riveting, and then using pieces of foam. I cut the foam to fill the gap, and using 2-part epoxy and some flocks to make it thick. That way it doesn't run all over the place. I went ahead and mixed that up and then used that to install the foam. I put the foam recessed slightly below the edge of the actual fiberglass tip. At that point, I used a very thin piece of lightweight plywood. This is 16th inch plywood. Laid it on the fiberglass. Again, you don't want to put your level directly on the foam, because when you put the foam in place and epoxy it, you're not going to be able to tell if it's perfectly level or not. So don't level off the foam. You want to level off of the edge of the fiberglass. And that, of course, is easy to do because the foam is recessed below it. So take something really lightweight, put it across the fiberglass, and then you just take a simple bubble level, put it on that, and then you level the entire horizontal stabilizer so that that bubble is correct. At that point, you now know that the top edge of the fiberglass is perfectly level in all directions. Then I mixed up another box of straight epoxy with no filler so that it was nice and watery, nice and runny. And you just pour that on and fill that gap. You just pour it in place until it is even, or as even as you're comfortable with, to the very top edge of the fiberglass. Of course, if you overfill it, it's going to run all over and make a mess. You got to be really careful, really slow. I'm a little bit conservative, so this is ever so slightly still below the edge of the fiberglass. If I had to guess just by feel, it's no more than probably 10 thousandths, maybe 15 at the most, just because I wanted to be absolutely sure that it didn't run over the edges. And I wasn't sure because, like I said, it's new to me doing this epoxy. I wasn't sure if for whatever reason as it cured, if it would puff up or kind of fill out as it cured, and I didn't want it to run all over the place. So it's ever so slightly still recessed, but you can just barely feel it. And of course, since I pre-leveled everything, it self-leveled itself, and it's perfectly flat, it's nice and smooth, and you can see it's perfectly clear. My logo here is actually drawn on the foam, so it is actually underneath the clear epoxy. But this is perfectly flat, smooth. It came out so much better than I expected, actually. No sanding, no jacking around, nothing like that. So that's ready to roll. Very pleased. So I'm not going to move on to another video yet because I'm starting a whole new project, but I've got all my fiberglass tips now finished, and I'm going to move on to the next thing, and I will talk about that in my next video. So until then, talk to you later.